what's kind of interesting is to see the coverage that we have in sports and watch it sort of trickle into other industries. And I think that that's a good segue to start talking about the major flexport news that just dropped,
Yeah.
related to, we'll get to that one in just a second, but it's kind of related to this first topic of what if freight tech companies were as honest with their employees as Dave Portnoy, CEO, founder of Barstool, is with his employees. And I'm going to bring up this tweet. So if you're just listening, I'm going to share a screen of the Dave Portnoy tweet, who he was talking about. Basically, after in our last episode, we talked about how he took back over the bar. He bought the company back for $1 after selling it for millions, hundreds of millions. And so he's on a tear right now. And it's fantastic to
So
see him
good.
kind of digging into the media business side of things, which I know we're both really fascinated by. We both work in media, fascinated by how other industries treat media, and sports just is such a beacon at the top that it affects all other industries and how it's covered. And so with this first tweet that we show, it is Dave Portnoy, and he's asking, how was Barstool losing money? We're jumping out of planes and filming it like we're filming Mission Impossible 8. Don't get me wrong, this is an unreal production value. You will also never see this again, so enjoy it, which I think is just so great because it's a produced video. But
Oh,
Barstool is very
it's
infamous for using the, I guess, in-office drama. Is that a safe assessment?
yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it's over the last well, they just let 100 people go last week. And so he's before even that happened, I think last episode we talked about the fact that no one was in the office the day that he bought it, and he was like, y'all are going to regret this because we're going to have to make cuts. I mean, you buy your company back for $1, you've lost value, And here's what's interesting about them is that you've went from basically creating content to get people to gamble with
Mhm.
Penn. That was the whole point. And as happy as we've talked about this past we are that that's kind of done, now it's back to a straight up just media company. And that's really his point in all this is that like, no, we don't have the budget of Penn anymore. We have the budget of a non-profitable company. I think he was telling people we lost $12 million last year.
Mm.
So how are we making that up? And it makes me laugh because I think about a lot of like the freight tech companies or even brokerages that we've talked about that are losing money hand over fist. And I wonder sometimes like why don't companies talk to their employees like he does? Now I think there's situations that are meant for content that I think are lightly inappropriate for a different setting that's not using that to make content, right? But I mean, like even those situations, like he's telling people, like, listen, like we're gonna lose 100 people, and it's gonna be
Mm.
people that are there's a lot of producers that people are fans of, a lot of behind the scenes people that now are going to the people that are left are going to have to take up their role. And that's like one thing that he like got on one of his employees for last 2 weeks ago was like he complained about one person being gone. He's like, I have to fire 100.
Mm.
And so I think the employee came back and said, well, how are we supposed to blog then on the weekend? And he's like, someone else does it. Like you got to make it up where you can. And as much as that it's harsh, I think in a startup setting, it's fair to explain that to people. And I think I've said this on the show before, even in a lot of what we write about or layoff situations and things like that. It's like I write those stories and try to explain in a way that makes business sense so that people understand the companies that they're getting into and the business model that they're getting into. There's a huge difference between joining the procurement process of or coming out of like a supply chain degree and joining let's say
Like
Johnson and
Gartner or
Johnson.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like someone who's huge where it's like they're not going anywhere. If they do have cuts, it's they're probably a little bit more analytical and seeing further down the line than a startup is, right? And then you have people who are joining, startups that we've seen have layoffs, Convoy, we've talked about Flock in the past, stuff like that. And it really irritates me sometimes talking to individuals who are like, I just didn't see this coming. And it's like, how? You're in a startup environment in an industry that's like just struggling. I mean, like, not that I think anything is wrong with my job here at Freightways, but I'm constantly working and sometimes even adding stuff to the work I'm doing for the company because I want to show that value.
Hmm.
But also, we're a pirate ship and we want to get shit done and we want to take Freightways to a certain level. And that's probably going to be a little bit more work outside of whatever you feel like your salary tells you it's worth. And I just think that sometimes our generation, my generation, is really, as much as I am for and love the whole employee rights thing, because I think that stuff is absolutely true. Like, you shouldn't treat employees like shit. That's kind of where some points I disagree with Portnoy in a more professional setting. But you have to understand the business model that's
Mhm.
behind it and the economics behind it and have those conversations like, listen, I'm not, you don't have to be transparent and maybe what the company is losing, but what do I need to do here to make sure that I'm solidified if something were to happen? And how can
Absolutely.
I, yeah, how can I
But it's
showcase
also
that value?
in understanding the business model of whatever company you're working for or working at, it's even from like a marketing perspective, I scream to marketers, you have to understand where revenue is coming from. Otherwise, you're
Yeah,
never going to be able to justify your role. And so, if you don't have that deep understanding, it's not enough to just write some blogs each week. You need to know what kind of traffic that is having an impact on your audience. What
yeah,
are they liking? What do they want to see more of? And then you have to do more of what they like and do less of what they don't like. And
yeah,
so there's all these different variables that it's almost like it's not just a business ROI, but what your personal ROI is. And maybe working at a startup is not right for you because you're going to
yes,
be working, 60, 70 hours a week. Do you want your work life balance? If you want work life balance, then go get a traditional 8 to 5 job, show up right at 8 and leave right at 5. But for
yeah,
some companies, if you really want something greater out of life, you're going to have to work the odd hours. You're going to have to work longer than what is traditionally thought of. But the thing is, like, if you typically will, you get back what you put in. And
exactly, yeah,
it's a personal investment, it's a personal choice. And I think that you're right, where it's like a lot of like the millennials, Gen Z, they have this glorified view of what work is. And it's like, look at the economy, look
hmm,
at where it's things are making money and things are losing money. Try to invest in careers that are going to be making money for the long run, and then be prepared to work. Because if you are prepared to work, from the time maybe you're 24 to the time that you're 40, that those years can determine how you spend the rest of your life. So
yeah.
do you want to bust ass now while you have a lot of energy, or do you want to wake up at 40 and think, "Oh my god, I've wasted so much time. I could have been building, I could have been compounding on all of the different things that I've done over the last 20 years and how that's going to affect the next 40 years of my life."
Yeah, and I don't want people to think that, like, one is better than the other. I just want
Right.
people to understand the circumstances that they're in and say to themselves, like, you know, "Is that something I want? Or is that something I mean, I think we've even talked about in the situation I'm in, like, I've been offered positions to go back into brokerage and kind of be in that same role, but I don't want that. I enjoy, and we were just talking about this, like, I enjoy being able to go get lunch with my dad if I want
Mhm.
to. I enjoy, and I have to work harder to make up for the income of the difference. And I've put in that work earlier that kind of, helps make that decision as
Or
well.
work a little late. I think you were just
Yeah.
talking about how you were
Yeah.
working until 1 AM. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's those I think that's also where a lot of folks that they get a little tripped up and they expect a certain set schedule, but then they value something that's not part of that schedule.
Yes.
And you have to take personal accountability, personal responsibility to get that shit done, even if you make those choices during the day that are going to prevent
Mhm.
you or maybe delay you a little bit longer than getting that job done.
Yeah.
Um, for this particular situation, using Dave, I guess, as the catalyst of where he's talking about, companies waste, or his company wasting money on just stuff that just is not necessary. Where do you think in freight that money is just obscenely wasted?
Yeah, I think that to bring up marketing again, I want to say marketing in particular, but I think I'm more of when I say that, I think it's more of how companies attack their marketing side of things. There's and I just I hate to say this 'cause I don't want people to think, of course she's gonna say that because of like what she does and what she's doing here with Blythe. But like I think people underestimate outsourcing it more than they should. I've been in the position before where you're hiring talented, wonderful, talented people who have no experience in this industry. And the amount of I think people don't realize the amount of time that it takes for you to help them understand what they're marketing, the importance of it, without any industry experience can be really rough. And a lot of times when I talk to different departments and things like that, it's like, oh my God, like the value of the product that you're building is just like going right over your head. Like,
Mm,
and maybe point A and B are important. And you're right, those are how your technology is helping. But like, that's the tip of the iceberg. There's C, D, E, F, and G that add up to even more of a better ROI or return in different departments. But I feel like sometimes because of how people invest in their marketing, that those points are never hit. And so there's PR firms out there that specialize right in these areas. There's uh, Blythe, people like you, right, who have the expertise, and that's why I'm like, yeah, people are like, here we go. But it's true, and I mean, I think it truly works, and because it's just a weird industry. And I think what upsets me is that we, especially in the freight tech world, right, there's so many fingers that are pointed that are like, oh, well, that wasn't built by people who come from the industry, so like, why should we trust it? Okay, then take that and throw that same energy at your marketing department. Because it's like, how do you, because that's what's selling your product at the end of the day, and
right.
that's what's helping shape the messaging behind it. So for you to say that tech companies can't build, engineers who are, built as engineers can't build something without the help, like, that doesn't make sense to me, and your marketing department doesn't mirror that same concept too. So I think that's a big area that people should consider a little bit more.
100%, because when I got started, and I started out as an executive assistant who was then given all of the marketing stuff because I merely had a present, because I had a blog, and because I was
Mhm.
present on social media. So it was one of those things where like, here, take it and run. And thankfully I had, a boss that was going to invest in me, that answered a lot of my questions that were
Yeah.
very elementary. But it took me a hell of a long time to learn what works. I spent so much time just trying to make a PDF presentation that
Oh,
looked good.
yeah.
And there was endless edits to it. So it's like the PDF presentation is like, okay, well, that looks good. So if people like this, then I can take this similar format and I can mold it to the website because I already know that they like this. So I'm going
Mhm.
to take it here. And then for a lot of the social media, I had no idea what I was doing. I did a lot of the traditional stuff that you see a lot of freight companies still doing today.
Yeah.
They're doing like "Happy Labor Day from our team to yours." Nobody cares. They're
Yeah.
just keep scrolling. That doesn't
Yeah.
impact folks at all. But I think for I would say, what do you think? Like 60-65% of freight companies market that way. And
Oh, yeah.
I would use quotation marks as like market themselves that way. There's really only a very small amount of companies in the logistics industry that are doing creative things when it comes to
Yeah.
marketing. But then everybody else is kind of doing okay things. And then the rest, I would say probably 60% are doing marketing things that they think are valuable, but have no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just got done with on Freightwaves Presents, and talking with Bill Priestley and Kevin Hill on what some companies can do to set the foundation of their marketing. If you are a marketer that's looking to kind of up their level, their knowledge level, I mean, it's sad to say there's not a lot of resources unless you go internal. I mean, I
Yeah.
worked at a trucking company for 5 years. I only knew trucking. I didn't
Yes.
know how intermodal interacts with it. I didn't know how maritime interacts with it. Planes, all
Yeah.
of these other things that have anything to do warehousing, robotics. I didn't know any of that until I started the podcast. And so starting the podcast was my education level or trying to get educated. But a lot of marketers don't have that luxury.
No.
So what would you, I guess, maybe suggest to those marketers who they're coming in from like an internship and they're working at what would you suggest to them to learn more about the industry before they make a fool of themselves?
I would say first, if you already have the job, right, and you're already in it, like just
Mm,
shadow employees and work and see exactly, especially the sales team, like what's winning over the phone, what pitches are they using that's bringing in customers, and take those pitches and run with them and figure out creative ways to draw an audience in around that, right? And then I mean, the fun thing about being on the logistics side too is that you're catering to both shippers and carriers. So same thing. So with the carrier department, see what let's say that you're sitting there and there's a carrier rep that every carrier loves, who's like never has issues, and use them to spotlight some of the carrier work that you're doing, right? Like, and I think that's probably the best way if you already have the job. If you don't, I would consider, if you want to be in this working in marketing in this industry long term, right? Like, know that you're going into it, because I think where I think it'll just be really hard to bounce from a logistics marketing job to like any other industry. It's hard to like kind of like bring that over. It might help you with like different like types of pitches and working with different like types of customers, like enterprise versus more small, medium-sized companies. Um, but really like sit and ask like what they need from you, and ask about budgets and things that are important, I think, to the job that you're hoping to do, and ask the support, right? Like,
mhm,
how available are you? If I have a question, are you really can I reach out to you at any point in the day, right? In your situation, you're able to do that, but in a startup environment, like getting a CEO to help you understand what a partial load is like, no, I've got so much stuff going on. And that's kind of goes back to like the expectations things. Like, you shouldn't hate the CEO for that.
mhm.
You should actually really like that they hired you for that role and they want you to run with it. But again, it's kind of setting expectations before you start that endeavor, and realizing, okay, this is going to be a lot more work than maybe I thought, and what your resources are, right? We talk about waste, like, are your resources good? Are they not? And judge your background and whether or not you can do that job.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And one way to really sort of expedite that shadowing process of what every marketer should be doing on a regular basis is also just get a tool like otter.ai. I swear
Yeah.
they're not a sponsor of the show. I feel like I
Yeah,
mention them
right?
in every piece of
Love
content that I
them.
create. But they automatically, for folks who don't know, they automatically join meetings. So you could set it up where you have an Otter AI team account. It auto joins every sales call, every client call, customer call, creates a transcription of that conversation, and then creates a list of takeaways. And you could use that as sort of a database of training. So then that way you can read through, come up with your questions, and
So
then be
smart.
able to go back to the leadership team and be like, okay, well, what was meant here? What did you mean by this? Like, how can I phrase this a little bit differently, a little bit better? Is something that annoys the hell out of me, is something that really learned the hard way during what some of my first presentations is looking for stock photos.
Yeah.
Basically, the only stock photos that are on the internet right now for the freight industry are European trucks. It's
Yeah.
getting a little bit better over the last 10 years, but I used European trucks on our website. And my boss was like, "What do you know?" He's like, "We are a reefer care asset based 3PL. We need
It's like
American
flatbeds
trucks."
everywhere.
He's
Like,
like,
look
"We
at
need
this RGN.
American trucks with the reefer unit on the back of the truck. Otherwise, people are going to call us fraudulent." And I was like, I didn't know that until I messed up. So I think that there's, giving yourself a little bit of grace to mess up, but then also some of your best content can come from the things that you don't know that you find fascinating. So I would
Yeah.
almost embrace that too, where it's like
Mm,
this industry, has traditionally been thought of as so boring, but that it's couldn't be further from the truth that you have so many cool stories to tell of like cool shipments and the logistics of which we always get into and we'll get into a little bit later on in the show, but you have those stories within your office and something that you may find really cool, I guarantee somebody else would find cool too, because a lot of these shippers, a lot of these customers, they don't know the ins and outs of freight either. And so with your content combined with the sales team and like a meeting note taking tool, you can combine all of those together into a nice little like Venn diagram of content that's going to generate brand awareness and then that resonates with the shippers, the people you're trying to target, who aren't necessarily going to care if it's like a reefer truck or like a flatbed truck,
yeah.
unless they're that's specific to their product that you're trying to haul, then that's a different story. So I kind of take
Yeah.
that back a little bit, but the point still stands that you have some cool stories within your company and don't be afraid to identify them, but also don't be afraid to be a constant learner. I think that that's
Yeah.
where, a lot of marketers, they just kind of stay to themselves and they're afraid to kind of ask questions and be curious, ask those questions, sit in on those meetings, and then, take it from there. I think that's a good sort of starting point. Any other areas of freight that is, money is obscenely wasted? I would throw advertising out there, but that's the only one I can really think of because a lot of these advertising firms, especially freight specific ones, they use the same photos for
Yeah.
different companies. And
Yeah.
kind of going back to, that point I just made about the lack of like truck photos that are on, these stock image sites. Take the extra step, take photos of your fleet if you have them, take photos of your office, make your content unique. Don't try not to use stock photos wherever as possible, but also audit the companies that you're outsourcing to because they could be using a lot of the same materials on different competitors. I mean, I there was an instance where I outsourced a video that I wanted created to a freight marketing company, and that freight marketing company used my exact template for another company, and I was pissed off about it, and I never
That's
hired them again. So
awful.
things that you got to keep in mind as solo marketers, as small team marketers, especially if you utilize outsourcing. So just those are a couple ways of where I think from my end where I see money being wasted. Is there anything else that you think is important to bring up?
I think if we're talking kind of on my end of things and a lot of the work that I do on a daily basis, I think automation in particular, a lot
Mm,
of the technology that we write about is almost more of a missed opportunity type of cost. The fear of spending money, I think, is the big one here. Especially, I won't get into it too much, but just some of this shit, I can swear on this, right? Some of the shit that I see like companies purchasing or doing, and I'm like, but you didn't want to even automate your back office. That shit's funny to me. I was talking to an individual in this space, and they were telling me how frustrating it is sometimes to sell technology to small, medium-sized players in this space. That the big players get it. They understand the investment. They understand what they want to scale to, what they want to get to, and the investment needed to get to that point. And something I think learning from Craig and here at Freight Waves is like moving quickly and understanding like you can't just sit on something that you know is going to make your company better, get it done, enact it, and see the payoff faster as well. But I think a lot of times in these, and I will say, I get it. I understand you're watching your P&L. I understand brokers, especially right now, you got tight margins and you're entering into a situation where now shippers are going to start rebidding right for the next year, and they're going to start squeezing those down even more, and it's going to get people in a tight spot. But there's so many areas of waste and opportunity within a brokerage, and I mean, one of my favorites is just back office, like
mm,
accounting in particular. And so often people say like, listen, that's just like it's a lot of money that we're putting out there. but at the same time, you're the same company that's hiring and firing 30 people every single month, right? And so for me, it's like I just like seeing there's nothing I love more than seeing a company invest in something, especially something maybe I've written about and I've been passionate about, and see it work out for them. I will Everyone out there should go and check out oh god, what is the name of her company? I'm gonna look it up now because I don't know why it's blanking on me because
Like a
I
back
was
office company?
no, no, it's we're talking about a company that I think has grown in particular. I just am like overly okay. There we go. Trailer Transport, Brittany Trailer. You know her. I guarantee you know her if you haven't met her.
I think I
In the
saw
past.
her on your Instagram story the other day.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay.
So she's when I first met her, she was you probably were there too. She was a small carrier. She had just started her own trucking company, and and don't even get me started on what people pay for events. So whatever. But she went to our Arkansas event,
Hmm.
which for the position that she's in is probably a huge investment for her. She used that opportunity so well. She talked to every single tech company. She was taking notes. She was watching every single chat. She was just just executing that investment so well. And out of that, she's now partnered with Turvo, which is again another investment, but one that has helped her scale immensely.
Hmm.
Probably what I shared was an interview where she discussed how 2 years ago she said, "I'm leaving a company," and she told all of the employees that she was working with that she was getting out of there. And now she's hired all of them,
Oh,
all
that's
of
cool.
her past coworkers, right, from this
That's usually
trucking
a good
company.
sign of a good company is if the
Yeah.
first when you go out on your own and the first people are the company or your first customers or employees are the first people that you worked with before.
For me, she's a perfect uh, case study of taking the resources that honestly FreightWaves has opened up to her, whether that's individuals like myself who she can talk to on how to kind of execute and attack things, whether it's the opportunity to, I mean, Turbo then had her at the next event. They brought her to F3 that following year to showcase to people like what their technology was able to do.
That's
And I
cool.
know companies that have done 40 meetings with Turbo or companies like it and say no. And it's like she said, you know what? These are the tools that I need to grow and become successful. And in an environment where carriers are firing drivers and just struggling to figure it out. I mean, I've talked to her for the market's hurting her, but she's still adding drivers and she's still growing. And she's invested in she's a carrier tech company. That's how
So
she
she's
markets herself.
that's
Like
cool.
it's really cool. It's so fucking cool because I talk to drivers all day long about whether or not AI is like real. Like we're still having that conversation. And it's like, stop it. Like realize what you need to get to where you need to be and just jump right in. And
Right.
she's just like, I just sent her one of her marketing videos, and it's like, it's what's so cool about it, Blythe, is like it's trickled into her whole culture. Everyone that's working with her is like making these cool marketing videos, and
Oh,
like
that's cool.
it's just so
What's her company name
cool.
again?
Trailer Transport, TRAYLOR, transport, a transpo, TRANSPO.
Trailer
Uh,
Transpo.
yeah, and it's like it's just so cool, and so I hope people understand that like if you can make the right investment in technology and you're into change management and focusing on how maybe your operations will change around it and just taking that jump, like the ROI is always there, usually there. Um, but it's
It's
on
definitely
you.
cool to hear, a
Yeah.
success story when so much is like just doomerism, like everything's
Yeah.
the sky is falling and there's no way out.
Right.
No, there's opportunity. As Littlefinger said in Game of Thrones,
Oh my
chaos is a
God.
ladder. So look for the
Yes.
opportunities in the middle of the chaos. And that sounds exactly like what she's done.
It's so good, and it's like, I think I text her at least once or twice a week, like, "Nailed it." Like, it's it's how a trucking company should grow, and she's just
That's
like
cool.
so good. Yeah, everyone go check her out. She's absolutely
Is she
incredible.
on Instagram or is it
She's on
website?
Instagram, LinkedIn. I think it's Trailer. Uh, I always accidentally spell Taylor whenever I send her an email. Trailer, TRAYLOR, Transpo,
Oh, wow.
TRANSPO.
So there's a Y in there. So trailer transport with a Y. So TRAYLER TRANSPO. And we'll make sure to include a link.
TRAYLOR, because Trailer is Brittany's last name.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yep.
We'll make sure that we put a link to her in the show notes to show off what good marketing looks like in the freight industry. I don't know how I'm going to transition to this next topic because this company has been historically very good at marketing. And I think that they are definitely one of the top companies when it comes to marketing. But we had a little bit of a news drop just yesterday, which I'm excited that it dropped yesterday so we can talk about it today, selfishly.
Yeah.
Um, Grace, tell us a little bit about what the hell is going on with Flexport because Ryan Peterson is back.
Yeah, he's back. This is a wild story. Because I will say this was like all happening while I was on the radio too. So it was like me like picking up different feeds. So basically, what I'll go through timeline because I think that kind of helps with all this. So on the 6th, because this is coming out right
Of this
later
month?
on the 6th of this. So yesterday,
Okay.
September 6th. Uh, Dave Clark, who started off as a co-CEO, which sounds like we'll get into that in a second, started off as a co-CEO with Ryan Peterson, and then ended up taking it full-time CEO this summer. Came out and said, "Hey, basically, I had this chat with Ryan. We're not aligning 100% on where we want to take the company with the way the market's currently going, et cetera, et cetera. So we've just like basically just discussed this, which was the weirdest part about it. It seemed like it was very like quick and
Abrupt.
fast, which that will come up in a little bit later in the story. And so I'm gonna step down, and Ryan is gonna come back. And Ryan was like, tweeted pretty quickly afterwards. I want to say 45 minutes afterwards, I'm back, down for it, etc. Um, Now it came out probably 45 minutes after that that there's a possibility that Clark is going to be running for governor of Texas,
Crazy.
which is like, in today's society, why not? I guarantee
Sure.
with what he's gotten paid in the past at Amazon, he probably can self fund it. So that's a very interesting state. I mean, we just did an article about transportation and trade and how much Texas could really become a huge booming economy. So for someone who has been a part of that ride too, it's could be a lot of fun for him, I think, to be a part of that. But so that came out, and that helped me make more sense into kind of like the quickness of it. But then middle of the night, like I said, yeah, think about me, guys. I just like don't I just take naps, periodical naps. It's like, and it's like very great. My doctor loves it, and I never hit REM, so it's no. But
It's healthy, healthy
yeah,
lifestyle.
it's like super healthy, and like I'm definitely not working on it at all. And so I see, and Rachel ended up reporting it to this morning that there's some room, there's suggestions and sources saying out there that eh, now the quickness will make sense of this, that he was actually fired by the board, uh and what I think is I mean, we've all been in businesses where we feel things coming on, right? So I think it was probably one of those situations where someone pulled a card a little bit quicker. But it is a huge story because
Mhm.
really what's happened here is you have someone who he told Rachel Premack perfectly. Go check out the story. You have an individual who comes from Amazon. And if you see from Shopify and a number of acquisitions and moves that Flexport's made while with Dave Clark, it's clear that he was brought on to help create more of this full logistics facilitator where
Mm,
I can help a either a Walmart, but I also have the capabilities of helping a mom and pop shop
mm.
buy globally, trade globally, And then at the end of the day, last mile services, point of sale systems, customer service, etc. So it's kind of like this whole really
Like
what
logistics in a
Amazon
box.
exactly what Amazon has done for their third party sellers, right?
Mhm.
There's like a phrase for it. I can't remember what it's Amazon something services, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about. It's on the tip of my tongue too.
yeah. And
Fulfillment services, I think.
yes, yes, AFS, that's what it is. So basically doing that at Flexport. And I think clearly it sounds like at some point Ryan can't, and it would just, it isn't working for where they want to take the company. And listen, like I said, Dave Clark seems like he's financially fine. He also seems like someone, especially if we're talking about going as governor, who would like to be maybe doing what he wants to in this time of his life. So if you have the opportunity to leave and do that, knowing that you're leaving a position that's not even really what you're passionate about to begin with, I'm also not surprised by it. And I think most of the industry is not surprised by it too once he broke down and explained, what he was hired for and
Mm,
why that's not happening. I think we see that a lot in the space too. And it's always interesting to watch maybe some of these uh partnership, right? Those type of roles, chief of partnerships or you see it in revenue as well. A lot of those individuals are brought on for a certain way that a company is looking to maybe gain customers or gain a market share. And if it's not working out, then why am I hired here? There's like someone that could use Dave's experience, or Dave could just honestly retire, right? Or become the governor of Texas. So, again, not completely surprised. What I am excited to see though out of this is like what happens next with
yeah.
Ryan coming back. He seemed very focused on his next steps in life. So,
He had just joined YC Found, or was he
nope,
YC or
nope, Founders Fund.
oh, Founders Fund.
You're
Okay,
thinking of
okay.
Combinator. Yeah, yeah. Nope, Founders Fun. And that's yeah, exactly. Like not that he was like over Flexport, but like he had an idea of what was gonna happen next. So I am interested to see where this goes, especially if that's what they're going straight back to focusing on freight forwarding. I mean, uh, maybe they get rid of some of those acquisitions, but
Or the
uh
plane, even though the plane looks really cool. They
well,
have
the
like a
plane
Flexport
the plane
plane.
they'll still use, right? That's the freight forwarding stuff right there. They just bought their own capacity, I guess. But yeah, it's exciting to see maybe what happens next there, and a yeah, strange
It
leadership
feels
movements.
I think it feels very abrupt.
Yes,
I think
yeah,
maybe if I'm reading between the lines, because I just pulled up Dave Clark's, LinkedIn profile, and just a day ago, he shared like an exclusive, like Flexport exclusive launch event. Come by and
yes,
say hello. Will be, sweet tech giveaways and some other surprises along the way. See you soon. He shared that a day ago on his
yeah,
LinkedIn profile. And I was the reason I pulled up his LinkedIn profile because I was curious what was his logistics experience prior to Amazon? And it looks like it was just Amazon for looks like 6 plus 4. That's yeah, so 22 years at Amazon. And I think that was his only logistics experience. And I say only as if that's not like a huge achievement. But if you're going to somebody like I think Amazon and their business dealings is vastly different than like a freight
yes.
forwarder where you have to understand all these customs rules and regulations
Nuances,
and
yes,
for global countries which are different for each and every country. So very interesting. I think that he did it kind of abruptly because I think Ryan, probably would have wanted to control the message a little bit more than just Dave just dropping the news on his own Twitter and then saying peace. And then from a communication standpoint, it looks like Dave wanted to be the first one at the jump to drop
yes,
the news. And I imagine that the PR department and the leadership team within Flexport was not entirely prepared for him to drop it that soon.
yeah,
But I like the "I'm back" tweet from Ryan Peterson because you could tell it's just so. I think it's really challenging to, first of all, the questionable decision of hiring a co-CEO, especially when you're such a a figure as the founder. Like you are a figurehead within logistics. Like you are going on like the top podcasts in the world to talk about logistics. So you're almost, I would say like him and Craig are like 1A, 1B as far as like the people who talk about logistics on the big like legacy platforms like a
Yes.
Bloomberg, or it's not legacy, but like the All In podcast, which is insanely popular. But Ryan Peterson is a friend of those guys on that show, and he's
Yeah.
spoken at their events. So I think it's really interesting to have such a big founder persona, and then think that hiring a co-CEO who is probably shares a lot of your same leadership qualities, that you would be able to balance that power. I just don't think, I think you got to have one person at the helm that is the ultimate decision maker, and then everybody else falls in line or follows suit, or challenge where appropriate, of course. But I do think that that move was doomed to fail from the beginning of hiring a co-CEO, and it feels like that's sort of the where a lot of other people are at. Would you agree, or would you think that co-CEOs work?
I no.
The look on your face.
I remember because I just remember when the news came out, I was like, "Ew!" Like, I, just in the back of my head, I'm like, "Oh, those must be really fun decision making meetings," like,
Like, who's the
like
final say? Like, if you're
exactly.
co-CEOs, that was one of the
Who's driving the vision? That's like the whole point of a CEO is to like drive that vision. And if you're telling me that, I mean, even in this situation when they did announce it, they did say that there was like a transition period, like there wasn't
Mhm,
going to be absolute co-CEO situation. But that also tells me that that the person might not be the right person for the job, because you have to take that time to transition them into it to understand where you want the business to go. And I just felt like uh, as big and the investments behind it that it was, like I I can only assume that the investors were like, "Great. Yeah, yay." Like that sounds solid. Um but yeah, so it's I think ironic, right, to see how it all ended, knowing that this is how it all started, because clearly that transition period did not work as if one hoped it would. It makes you feel like, okay, probably wasn't the best person to lead it, or the thought process of how to grow it, of what he was supposed to do, wasn't well thought out with too. So yeah, it's very interesting. And I just wonder, it's yeah, with someone like Ryan who does talk so much, like if we'll find out more within the
I
next
think
couple weeks.
with like, we were talking about freight marketing earlier, and I mentioned how I'm such a fan of their marketing, and I don't know how many of those people are still actually at Flexport. I think they were unfortunately involved in some of their layoffs about a year ago,
Mhm.
when the new CEO or co-CEO took over, and so I think some of those people are unfortunately not with the company anymore. But they were one of the first to create like, hey, here are some people on Twitter that you should be following that work in the freight
Yes.
industry. So simple things like that, interview series, shining a spotlight on women in logistics. And one of my personal favorites, and I'll share it with you now, is the beer of lading. Is
What?
such. Have you ever seen this? They
No.
made
How do
their
I get
own
those?
beer, right?
Where are those sold at?
Well, Ryan tweeted this out in June of 2022, so about a year ago. I'm not
That's
sure
funny,
how they
dude.
actually have sold these or whatever. But if you're just listening, it's essentially a beer they made. Flexport made their own beer, and it has the label on it that calls beer of lading. Obviously, a play on bill of lading. But then also like the graphic design and the bottom of it, where it looks like waves of the ocean and like little cargo ships in the way. The design is beautiful. The name
Yeah.
is insanely clever. I just think that somebody like Orion, who goes on all of these, sort of mainstream legacy podcasts, to have somebody like that is a fan of marketing like this, our industry needs it. And I don't know, what the ROI of something like a beer of lading can is. I just think it's fun, and I want more like fun freight marketing. And I don't know where you can
Yes.
buy this. Maybe that's a good decision, that or a good question that we could ask Ryan. But related to, sort of the what you were referring to as like the qualities and the leadership decisions of what's being made at the top, like who's driving the ship. There are during all of this, sort of kerfuffle that was happening yesterday. One member of the logistics community tweeted out this book that's called Chasing Stars: The Myth of Talent and Portability of Performance. And he mentioned this book because of all of the points that you were sort of highlighting, and the fact of how are you going to bring in this company or bring in this person who's had a tremendous amount of success at another company, and how do you know that they're going to be a fit for your company? And maybe some of the warning signs were there ahead of time that should have probably been paid attention to. And so a few of these things, a few of the key takeaways from the book is that performance isn't always portable. The role of context, which sort of I guess puts a focus on, okay, if they were successful, what is the context of what they were successful in the industry and the company that they were working in the conditions of the economic environment of where they were working. If you were working, at a trucking company during 2020 to 2022, you were probably favoring, pretty well with rates. That success during that point versus this year is probably not going to translate, or maybe it won't translate. That remains to be seen. But there's a couple of other points here. One I thought was really interesting is in the book it says the gender differences in portability, where it identifies an interesting gender dynamic where a women's performance appeared to be more portable than men's in the specific comment or context that he studied. This was attributed to the idea that women had to build more portable external networks because they may not have had much access to internal firm-based resources.
Oh my god, is this my life? Uh it's so funny. Oh my god, it's so no, this is hilarious because I feel like personally I had to do a little bit of that
Hmm.
between my experiences because I felt like I needed more of that external network in order to showcase my skills or to
Like an insurance
provide.
policy.
Yeah, exactly. Like a way for me to say like here is the skills that I have and here are the people in different areas of our industry that can support that, right? That's incredible. I will say starting off just on the portability of an employee. I will say that I think this often, and I think this is like part of the whole like non-compete discussion as
Hmm.
well. I just, in the startup environment that I'd been in the past, we would oftentimes get individuals who were kind of like that star, which is another one that I think I don't know if you've touched on it yet, but the
The
dangers
cost
of
of Oh,
yeah,
the dangers of star hiring strategy. To companies that
yes,
seek to hire away star performers from competitors often find that these individuals do not perform as well in their new setting. This questions the wisdom of hiring strategies that prioritize the recruitment of high-performing individuals without consideration for how they will fit into the new environment.
that one
That's pretty spot
That one
on.
yeah, and I've seen it happen over like, when we first started, there was an individual, like, when it was 3 of us at the company at one point, we had hired, like, an all-star, from a very good brokerage, and, you know, as a small broker, especially at the time where, this was when the, bond had changed for brokers, so there was a lot of brokers leaving the industry and a lot of new ones coming in who could afford the new bond.
What was it when it went from like 75 to 100,000 or something
Yes.
like that?
Mhm. Yep. And so in that, like, we already were struggling to, like, showcase to carriers that we could pay our bills, right?
Hmm.
And so, like, this individual comes in and yeah, there's a good book that he could bring with him, but I mean, especially at the time, like, we were flatbed oriented, and this was like, I wanna say I wanna say that he was, like, into, like GFS type of moves, like, these, like, food services and stuff like
Hmm.
that. It's like we don't have any reefer capacity. We don't have the ability to take huge losses. That was another one. There's another big company that we had I wouldn't say took someone from, but someone from over there had come over and helped us, secure a customer and was like just running losses nonstop.
Hmm.
And he had come from a different incentive system, and from a company who could take losses on all these loads. And it's just like, no, we aren't looking to organically grow that way. We're bootstrapping. And when you're bootstrapping, you can't cut your margins down to 1% in order to get by. So like that individual is actually costing us money. And I think that's, you see that, I think a lot in this industry is like, and that's why I think the whole non-compete thing is even funny to me, because how often do those individuals that you steal, how quickly can they bring that stuff
Hmm.
over? Like especially the bigger the account, like uh, how easily is someone like Walmart going to say, "Oh yeah, you know what? Yes, I'm going to move this completely over to a different company just because you're some guy I trust." No, you're a peon in their worlds. It's like, so I think that's a little bit of it. I think you see a positive star situation more on like a higher level of someone who's been in the industry for 30 years and just has that Rolodex and that um reputation built in the industry, where it's like, yeah, that person is going to close P&G for you,
Hmm.
that person is going to get you in the door for, sorry, there's a bug on my microphone, um is going to get you in the door to a bigger customer. But I don't think a lot of times that works 100%. And honestly, you end up finding out that a lot of those individuals are have really bad
Hmm.
behavior. They're that all-star who brought culture down. And at what point are you really willing to risk that? And like, how much business is this individual going to come in that's not also detrimental to the business that maybe is now coming out? So,
Yeah, are they a team player? Are they going to did they get away with a bunch of shit at the other place
mhm,
that they worked at because they brought in so much business? And
exactly.
they maybe come into the new spot with a little bit of swagger and I think anytime you join a new company, you almost have to have a little bit of like a humbling part or a humble part of your personality where you got to learn
Yeah.
you got to learn new culture. You got to learn new what's allowed in the office, what's not allowed in the office. How do you collaborate with teammates and executives and the dynamics between all of that? So it's not necessarily transferable from one company to another. To your point.
Yeah. And I think we've witnessed maybe some individuals out there who are doing that, and
Oh,
it's
you stopped yourself there.
power to you. Go for it. I wish you all of luck, but it's like, uh, sometimes our generation makes me laugh. We're so confident in ourselves sometimes, and it's like, put the work in, and that'll work out. But I also like, there's people in this industry that we all know that do have that network and have
Hmm.
built up decades of time in order to pull that off. And just because it's easy for you to get an LLC and say that you're doing something doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. So we'll see.
Ooh, the shade.
So funny.
This is
I
this
saw
is the beauty of this conversation is that there's layers to it.
oh, there's layers, honey. Like like,
I
no,
did
it's
want to
oh, it's funny. I
before
every
we
episode I just like get too shady and I have to take phone calls afterwards.
well, speaking
But
of which, I want to move on to our next segment, but quickly, while we're talking about good and bad marketing, it's kind of like the theme so far in this show. I did want to showcase a company that is, I think, doing a stellar job of marketing. We've been talking, for I think you and I, Reed from Lost Freight, Craig, of course, everybody's been kind of pumping up Twitter/X and getting more or getting more people from the freight industry to come over on the platform and just post more. Ryan Peterson is a perfect example of that with his great marketing. But another company that I wanted to highlight is Truck Stop.
dude,
I
oh my god, who did Truck Stop hire in the last couple months? That's so funny. Everyone, she didn't even tell me she was gonna say Truck Stop, and then I was about to be like, if she says Truck Stop right now, Yes, I support this thought process 100%. And if anyone at Truck Stop is listening right now, whoever is running your Twitter account is
Whew.
killing it.
Yes. They are doing so good. We're showing one of their latest tweets.
So
Obviously,
good.
we know that fraud is a big industry problem. It's only been getting worse and worse. And there are a bunch of companies that are kind of turning a blind eye to it a little bit, but there are other companies that are highlighting the problem, figuring out where the problems are, and offering solutions. And so, Truck Stop is not hiding behind some of these things that they just released a tweet yesterday that they were highlighting all of the accounts denied by Truck Stop's fraud prevention in 2023. And so they have the branding, of course. I think, it's no surprise of who's, I guess maybe they're taking a shot at here. But they've this image is 7,155 accounts that they have blocked, and they're showcasing this as, hey, come work with us because we have the fraud prevention capabilities that you have been screaming from the high heavens for. And they're not afraid to talk about it, and they're not afraid to double down on it, which I love. I love when people go on
So good.
social media and they have a hot take, or I guess a quote unquote hot take, and they don't back down and they double down on it. It's like instant respect when a company is
So
able to
good.
do that. And this isn't the only tweet that they've been firing off. They've been firing off a lot of different tweets, or a lot of different posts on X, whatever we're calling it today. But it's really, really good. So, I just wanted to sort of co-sign what you just said. Whoever is running the Truck Stop Twitter account, kudos to you.
And I felt it. It's someone they hired someone in the previous quarter that it's got to be a millennial because they're using more emojis. They are. Can you see the replies? Their replies are so good. No, no, no. Like how they're replying to other people's tweets. Like that's
Oh,
what's really been like how I've been enjoying. Is like, oh, someone is on there like putting in some actual work and like reading what people are saying. Uh, and I just, again, whoever is running it, I'm feeling the presence. I'm enjoying it. It's like, again, Blythe and I did not like plan that. Yeah. See, look at these gifts.
it's like,
I
see,
love it's
the
so
bare
good.
minimum can
I'm
work in
emailing
freight right
Brent. I'm
now.
emailing Brent after this episode and telling him to give that person a high five because they again are just like that. It's funny, like, again, neither of us had like told each other we're going to talk about this, and we already had the same experience. Like, I'm seeing it in the timeline, I'm seeing the response. Yeah, exactly. See, like, scammers
These
gonna
kind,
scam.
yeah.
It's that's so simple. How do people just like kind of how does that go over people's heads?
It's not
Like,
complicated. Whatever conversation, or not whatever conversations are going off on the brokerage floor or the sales floor, like these are the kinds of conversations that you could be, some of them, not all of
yeah,
them. But some of them that you could be, having that gravitas, that little bit of a
yes,
swagger. Like, yeah, we've heard you. We know this is a problem. Here's our solutions. And hey, it's actually like a real person that's responding to this. It's not just like auto tweets with a few hashtags that nobody's going to click on and nobody's going to use. These are real replies, these are real interactions, real engagement. And that's all we want from people who are going on these social media platforms, is to have a personality, because your personality is going to get you talked about.
yeah, love it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for bringing that up
No,
because
but I just
I felt that like a couple weeks ago. I remember they replied to something I did, and then I saw them replying to something else. Like it might have been a Craig tweet or something, and I was like, this is new, like
somebody has a personality in freight. Like, we immediate
yes,
follow, like immediate interaction. Because I just, yeah, we're both big fans of that. It show you up authentically. That's what we mean. Like, have a
yes,
selling point and have a little bit of a swagger behind it, and not be afraid to have that confidence and be able to double down and not have to have every tweet go through, legal and all of the
just
different approval processes. Just let your creative people be creative within, obviously, don't let them talk about like politics or religion or,
yeah.
anything like that, anything questionable like that. But if it's in their domain, let them boast about it.